Hello there, VT English 4 students. Today's lesson is going to be on the basic comma rules. So let's get started. By the way, I'll send you or connect this slideshow so you can use it as you need it. I got this information from the Writing Center website there. Alright, so the first rule, number one, separating independent clauses. An independent clause is something that can stand alone, a complete sentence. In this rule, you are going to be using a comma and then a conjunction. And, but, yet, or, so, or, nor, for, those type of things. But they need to be independent clauses, stand alone. Here's a couple examples. He walked down the street, comma, and then he turned the corner. Number two, you can go shopping with me, comma, or you can go to a movie alone. Both of those are independent clauses, and you can just take out the comma and the or and put periods and capitalize the U. Rule number two, after an introductory clause or phrase. So a comma is used after a phrase that's not a complete sentence, and then it tells the readers that the comma tells the readers that the introductory clause is at the end, and then you have the main part of the sentence. So for example, when Evan was ready to iron is an incomplete sentence. We can just take it off. His cat tripped on the cord. That's a complete sentence. Near a small stream at the bottom of the canyon doesn't have a subject, so it's, or a verb even. So you need to put a comma there before park. This one you're pretty familiar with. Use a comma to separate each item in a series. There's been some confusion, or some people who say, oh, you don't have to have the one between the second and third one, but you do, and it's how they're going to grade you on the SAT. So go ahead and just get into a habit of doing one between each, and I'll show you this, what that means in just a second here. So we bought apples, comma, peaches, comma, and bananas today. So you have to put one between peaches and the word and. Mary promised that she would be a good girl, comma, that she would not bite her brother, comma, and that she would not climb into the television. So that's a series of clauses that they've put together. The third type is a series of phrases. The instructor looked through his briefcase, through his desk, and around the office for the lost grade book. So make sure you put both commas. Rule number four, set off non-restrictive clauses. They're kind of like the rule number two, except that they can be in the middle. So you use commas to enclose clauses not essential to the meaning of the sentence. They can be taken out. All right? So they're also called non-restrictive. So you need to put commas around them. If the clauses are essential, they're called restrictive. Both restrictive and non-restrictive clauses may begin with these relative pronouns at the bottom here, such as who, whom, whose, that, which. So keep an eye out for those. Here's some examples. See if Strom, whose show you like, will host a party next week. So whose show you like is non-restrictive. Number two, John, who spent the last 3 days fishing, is back on the job again. So who spent the last 3 days fishing is non-restrictive. You have to put commas around it. Now number three is restrictive, so you don't put commas. The gentleman who was standing by the fireplace is a well-known composer. The reason this one is restrictive because we don't know which gentleman they're talking about unless we have who is standing by the fireplace. So you really need that. So there's no commas there. Now you may or may not have heard of an appositive, but an appositive is a noun or noun phrase that renames the nearby noun. So they offer non-essential information. So whenever you see that, you have to have commas around them. So non-restrictive appositives are set off with commas. Restrictive appositives are not. So just remember, non-restrictive, you need to put commas. If you look at the cartoon, my dog, comma, Rex, comma. So the name of the dog is Rex. So if it's restating the name of the dog, then it's an appositive. Here's a couple examples. Alexander Pope, the Restoration poet, is famous for his monologues. That's an appositive. And so if you took out the Restoration poet, it would still make sense. Number 2, the poet Pope is famous for his monologues. You really can't take out Pope and know who it is, what the poet is. So you need to keep that in there so it is not an appositive. Number 3, the New York Jets, the underdogs, surprised everyone by winning the Super Bowl. If you take out the underdogs, it still makes sense, so it's an appositive. Rule number 6, to indicate direct address when you're really talking to a specific person. So rule number 6, when a speaker in a sentence names the person to whom he is speaking or she is speaking, direct address is indicated by the use of a comma or commas if it's in the middle. All right, so you see how there's a difference? Let's eat Grandpa. Ew. And then the next one, let's eat, comma, Grandpa. So these 3 examples show how to do it when number 1 is where you have it in the middle. Number 2 is how you have what you do when it's in the beginning. And number 3 is what you do when it's at the end. Just make sure that there's commas going around the name of the person. Number 7, to set off direct quotations. So when you're quoting or you have 2 parts of a quote, then you need to put a comma and then the verb said or spoke or whatever the verb is right before and after the quote. For example, let's look at it. It's easier. Mary said, comma, and then you have the quote. And the second one is the quote and then comma, she said. Now look at the quote. The quotation mark is outside of the comma, but you still have a comma. So you have loud, comma, quotation mark, she said, period. It's very important that you get that in the right order. And then number 3 is where it shows it in the middle. So quotation, I dislike concerts, comma, quotation mark, proclaimed Mary. So proclaimed is the verb, Mary, comma after Mary, and then the rest of the quote, quotation marks. And then if you'll notice at the end of the sentence there, here's a bonus, you put the punctuation inside the quotation mark. All right, last rules for dates. Actually, it's only part of the first rule. Dates, address, titles, and numbers. So for dates, you always put it between the date and the year. On December 12th, comma, 1890. And then you have one for addresses. So you put one between the city and the state. But you don't put one between the state and the zip code. All right. Titles, that's not the title of a book. It's more of a, if it's a doctor, if it's a psychologist or somebody like that, then you put their name, comma, their PhD or MD or whatever it is, and then a comma after that. Okay. And then numbers. This one is the most basic one. You put commas in big numbers, more than 4 digits, or 4 digits or larger, so that you can set it off in groups of 3. All right, so now it's your turn. Number 1, are you attending my graduation or are you visiting your aunt in Chicago? All right, I'll give you a little hint. It's rule number 1. If you think about it, where would the comma be? Right there. Right after graduation. All right, next one. Marty ate 4 pancakes, 2 bacon strips, and a bowl of grits. That's a series. So you need to, that's rule number 3, you need to look for where you put the commas. So Marty ate 4 pancakes, 2 bacon strips, and a bowl of grits. Where are they going to go? Right up there. Next one. The movie, although Susan enjoyed it immensely, left her in tears. So this one is rule number 4. If you rule, that one is the non-essential phrase. So where's that one? The movie left her in tears. Yep. So all that in the middle there needs to have commas around it. Simon Blake, a well-known lawyer, may run for governor. So number 5 is this rule, so it's an appositive. So which is the appositive part, the restating who Simon Blake is? Yep, a well-known lawyer. Make sure you put the comma before and after. If you ever need a ride, Judy, just let me know. So that is rule 6 where you have a direct address, Judy. So you need to put a comma before and after. I'll eat the eggs, said Jane, if you'll eat the bacon. Man, I'll eat the bacon. Anyways, so this is rule number 7, so it's a direct quotes. Where do you put the commas? That's right, before said and after Jane. The winner of the contest will receive, well, it's kind of hard unless we know where the commas are. Looks like there's $1 million. It's a lot easier if you have the commas there. All right, last one. Although the sky was cloudy, no rain was in the forecast. This was a rule number 2. Rule 2 is the introductory clause. So although the sky was cloudy, that's not a sentence. No rain was in the forest. That's a sentence. So you need to put it right. So although the sky was cloudy, comma. All right. Well, I have a passage for you to look at and practice your comma rules. So look for that in the lesson. Thanks.